Hello, everybody. Welcome to the inaugural test episode of TOKUCAST with me and Tom Oliver.
Hello.
And on today's episode, special guest May.
I'm alive. It lives.
And we just watched Shin Gojira, or Godzilla Resurgence, from 2016, directed by Hideaki Anno,
My lord and savior.
and Shinji Higuchi, the Gucci Mane. Tom, how many times have you watched this movie so far?
That was my second viewing.
Okay, mine as well. I saw it in theaters the first time. You've never seen...
I saw it -1 time.
You've seen no Godzilla movies
I've seen
before.
King Kong.
Does not count.
Yeah, not even close.
Did you even see the American Godzillas? The 2014 one with the...
I didn't,
Did you
It
see
didn't
the
catalog
Godzilla
it.
98 with Matthew Broderick?
No.
You're lucky.
I've seen that one probably the most times. I've probably seen that upwards of 10 times as a kid.
God, why are we friends?
I loved that. When I was a kid, to me, all that mattered is it was a Godzilla movie. And because of the fact that the baby Godzillas were kind of like velociraptors, and I was also really into Jurassic Park, it was like a 1-2. It was like I got to watch Godzilla and Jurassic Park.
Except it wasn't Godzilla at all.
Or Jurassic Park at all.
That's a lot of fish.
Go autism.
So, first of all, I think we all loved Shin Godzilla.
Yes.
Because it's awesome. Will you hand me that can right there?
Yeah, I can do that.
It's
You got more drink than me.
it's kind of like watching... First of all, this is the closest thing we're ever going to get to live-action Evangelion.
Mm-hmm.
And also, it's just a very timely effect. It's a movie that uses a timely incident, because it's obviously structured around the Tohoku earthquake and how the Japanese government responded to it. The 2011 earthquake, for those who don't know, where the nuclear reactor melted down, kind of ruined the country for a few years, kind of made things real shit. And for once, they didn't... While it was a disaster that caused it, the level of the calamity was also because of the way it was handled and the bureaucratic systems in place that prevented quicker response from happening, that could have prevented as many, casualties or as much fallout as there was. So,
Bureaucracy equals bad.
Yeah.
well, and Tom, you were talking about what the original 1954 Godzilla movie is a response to.
Yeah, there was some nuclear testing done in Japan. Obviously it was the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombing, but there was also some nuclear tests, I think a couple years later, that fucked up the entire fishing industry. And so the movie was made in response to just how Japan was the testing ground for all this nuclear fuck-uppery and was getting the short end of the stick.
That has to happen here too, right?
I'm sure they do all sorts of
we do most of our
crazy
nuclear testing out in the deserts of Arizona and Nevada.
So,
I don't know. My college was 2 miles from a nuclear power plant.
Well, I don't think that was for testing. That was
I
just for
don't know,
powering
man.
the goddamn place.
Well,
There were some aliens there.
dude, you never fucking know.
Yeah, I mean, the whole conceit of Godzilla from the beginning has always been that he's basically a Komodo dragon or some kind of sea creature mutated by, in the U.S. one, it was a Komodo dragon specifically, I think. In Japan, I mean, the name Gojira literally means, god whale, right?
Yeah. It's the origin changes depending on the canon of the series.
Right.
In 1954, it's a dinosaur, assumedly. The Showa series, they never talk about what it is. In the 90s films, he's another dinosaur. There's a whole movie. The first Godzilla movie I ever saw, actually, was the 90s Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. And in that movie, they go back in time to see how Godzilla was made. And he's this dinosaur that was on this island during World War II. And it got exposed to the radiation in the aftermath of World War II, and it mutated into Godzilla.
So it's like a living dinosaur?
A living dinosaur.
Okay.
The movie's plot was pretty fucky because they end up taking the dinosaur and putting it underwater, and somehow it survives underwater even though it's just a normal dinosaur and mutates into Godzilla anyway.
So has it always been considered to be that he's doing nuclear fission inside of his body, or is that more specific to this movie?
It's more specific to Shin Godzilla. He's always been nuclear powered, and there's been bunches of movies where he goes after nuclear power plants and stuff.
Yeah, I know in Godzilla 2000, that was the one where he was going to he was a nuclear reactor about to blow, and that's why they had to deal with him, right?
That was Godzilla versus Destroyer, which was the last one of the '90s movies. And
Right.
yeah, like the whole plot of that movie is that like his heart's a nuclear reactor,
Right.
and it's going critical. It's going to destroy the entire world.
Fuck.
Damn.
So they're like, shit.
Yeah. So in this one, he's also he's a nuclear reactor, but what's important about him is that because he's constantly performing nuclear fission inside of himself, he's like evolving and mutating at a rate whereas humans evolve generationally, this thing evolves by itself.
Like, conditionally, essentially.
Yeah. And it can just rapidly, like, wherever it is, it can mutate as fast as possible. And so, I know, right? Literally. So, well, and that's what this whole movie is about, like, goals, like human race #goals.
Right.
Because it basically suggests that in a world where, our enemies or the things that we have to be worried about are evolving at a constant rate, we also need to be able to evolve at a constant rate. And when you slow down, human potential with bureaucracy, with constantly having to recheck everything, despite being aware of at least some facts, like, there's so many scenes in this movie where our main character, Yaguchi, is that his name? Yaguchi figures out what is going on, and then it's a matter of, like, 10 minutes of proving it to everyone else in the room, and that 10 minutes is the 10 minutes in which Godzilla destroys 3 more towns,
Right.
And so it's constantly a matter of just, like, we need to be able to, in a crisis situation, to, like, lay down, like, it's understandable why we have bureaucracy as a country on the day-to-day, but if we're in a disaster situation, like, it needs to be put aside.
Mm-hmm.
We need a flat, how does he describe the new type room that he puts together? He says it's a flat rank or something like that?
It's like a flat organization.
Yeah, a flat
You
organization.
leave rank at the door, and anyone can talk freely.
Right, and the one guy says he's like, I am nominally in charge, but, like, this
Yeah.
is just everyone trade ideas, and
Think as fast as you can, work as fast as you can.
Right.
And it's interesting that they bring that up because that's like an actual like business methodology called Scrum that's been popularized. It started being popularized in like, I want to say like 20 or so years ago in like software development.
Oh, I imagine, because what Anno organizes is a fleet of top autists.
Essentially.
Yeah.
Like, not even ambiguously. Like, they literally are
They
like, you
literally
guys are
say,
otaku
"You're the
freaks.
quirky
Like,
people."
yeah, you're the weirdos who bureaucracy hates, but, like,
We need you. We
you
depend
can
on
think
you.
faster because you are just obsessed. Like, the people who are going to find the answers are the ones who are just obsessively in search of the answers, not for any personal gain, just because they need to know.
Yeah.
And those are the people who end up. And I love that it begins. The first one we get introduced to is the, like, flagrantly autistic girl.
Yeah.
The one who's just like,
Yaguchi's
The
friend.
biologist girl.
yeah, she's just, like, totally emotionless, just like, here's the information. Like, she has no sense of humor, but, like, she is
Totally
human.
tone deaf,
Because we
just
see her at the end of the movie, like, expressing that
like,
relief, and it's like, yeah.
Everything's gonna be okay. We're
Right.
not totally fucked.
And what's great about this movie to me is, like, there is, other than Godzilla, there's no bad guy. There's, like, a lot of people who, it's just the structure that is the problem, you know? And, like,
yeah.
no one's trying to hold back progress. No one's being, like, in the stupid-ass US 1997 movie, there was, like, the mayor who's just like, oh, we just gotta bomb the Godzilla,
Yeah, it was really dumb.
And then he gets stepped on by Godzilla. It's like,
Ironically, bureaucracy's like, I don't want you to guys drop missiles on my city.
yeah,
I
exactly.
want you to blow up Madison Square Garden. No, we can't do that. Fuck them.
Yeah, but in this movie, it's like, everyone's trying in the way that they know how. There's some interesting metaphors in, like, the structure of the film that literally all the old guys just get killed at one point. And it's kind of like just saying, like, hey, look, if you, like, the only way change is gonna happen is when the older generation dies off. But, like, I mean, that always will happen. Like,
Right.
they will die off, and we will have the younger generation have to take up the reins and run the country. And, like, a situation like this lets you sort the best
Yeah.
and the brightest,
They were very Japanese, very noble.
Yeah, everyone went down swinging. Everyone went down very patriotic. Like,
I felt when the prime minister sacrificed himself, I had feels.
yeah,
I liked
Well, I
him.
wouldn't say he sacrificed himself. He just kind of got killed.
Well, no, he was like, I'm gonna stay with my
Oh,
city
yeah, when he said
till
that.
the end.
But they did convince him to try to leave. It just didn't work out
ironically,
that well.
if he had stayed, he would have lived.
Yeah, funnily enough. But,
He's dumb.
I remember, because the first time I saw this movie, because this time I knew what was going to happen, so, I was less fixated on any individual character, whereas the first time I watched it, I'd been really concerned, because the old guy who was in the Prime Minister's cabinet, like the super old dude who talks really slow, he was the one who I felt like was kind of the most reasonable, that he would always listen to the younger guys and then kind of like frame it in a way like, Prime Minister, we need to do what those guys are saying. So when he got killed in that, I was like really worried that it was going to go down the shitter, and they kind of try to make you even more worried by having the new Prime Minister be a guy who's like got no idea what's going on. Yeah. But then it's also because he's like that he eventually just kind of relinquishes control to the other people. Just like, look, like, I am not the one who needs to be running this show. Like, you guys just do what you need to do. And at first that seems like an unfortunate decision because he kind of defers to the Americans, and it's just like, we're just going to let him nuke us. And it's like, I mean, I don't have a better option. But then when he does have a better option, obviously he's not going to do that. At no point is anyone just stubbornly sticking to the old ways just for the sake of it. It's always like, we're just doing as best we understand.
It's a very much a man versus nature archetype.
Yes,
conflict.
For sure.
There's no human being an asshole about it.
Yeah, and it's very similar to did you ever see The Martian?
Yes.
It's kind of like that movie in that did you see The Martian?
Have not.
The Martian's about like a guy gets trapped on Mars and they're trying to find a way to save him, and it's just about like all these different, that one's more about like the global aspect that like you need every like different country in the world working together with their top autists to make this happen. In this movie it's more just like Japan trying to, solve it themselves and, like,
mainly Japan,
believing in
France,
themselves.
and the U.S., like, no other country is really mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, they talk about the UN here and there, but it's very referential. Not...
But I mean, even then, they make it clear that none of those countries are doing anything maliciously. It's never like...
Yeah, I mean, the only reason that the U.S. even is like, we're going to nuke Godzilla and nuke Tokyo is because, we found out that this thing can mutate and, like, travel intercontinentally, and it's a threat to the entire world. Mm-hmm. And it's reproducing. Like, it needs to be killed now or we're all fucked.
Yeah, and one of my favorite lines is when a guy says, like, oh, it's easy for them to say about far-off Asia, and then the guy's like, they said if it was in New York, they'd do the same thing. It's like, look, this is not, it's just about stopping Godzilla, goddammit,
Right.
Like, no hard feelings.
We just gotta stop Godzilla, like, it's all about how fast can we progress information, and, like, I love the scene, because early in the movie, like, Yaguchi's really frustrated with all the, and it's kind of painted as, like, a comedy of errors, the first 30 minutes or so of the movie, where we just keep watching all these old dudes, like, walk between different conference rooms,
it's
and,
this
like...
hilarious kind of, like, scene where you just have these guys, it's just, like, quiet, no background music, and just these guys talking about what's going on. Then it'll cut to, like, Godzilla rampaging through the city to, like, a crazy score. Then immediately cut back to silence as they're talking about it.
Yeah.
And, like, well, we have to go meet downstairs. So everyone just gets up, goes downstairs, sits back down, and continues the conversation.
And there's, like, people who are, like, writing down notes to give to a higher-up guy to read the note to the higher-up guy, and they're all in the same room.
Right, it's just like, we can't just talk to each other. We could shave precious seconds off of this, but
politeness has to go out the window when the world is ending.
Yeah.
There's a great scene where Yaguchi just says, like, exactly what needs to be done, and three guys look at him and go, like, who are you talking to? Like who is this command for?
They look directly at the camera as they say it, and it's just like... hilarious.
God, the framing of every shot is fucking perfect in this movie.
I really loved all the evacuation scenes where it just cut to, like, different positions and you'd see people just going nuts.
Yeah. Everything is so... Like, Anno has a way of just giving you the shot that will just give you all the information in one go. Like, it never has to cut to a whole scene of people evacuating. It'll just be like, what are the 3 images that will immediately let you know, like, the state of mind of the people, I love in the beginning of the movie where there's, like, little bits of, like, a found footage element of people, like, making internet videos.
And they're
like,
giggling and like, oh, this is fun.
Oh, we're
this
going
is
down
cool.
the slide.
Sugoi!
And then later on, it's like everyone's fucking, like,
miserable.
panicking. There's a few moments in this movie that, like, fucking that are like like this movie is kind of a horror movie, especially in the middle, and like Godzilla is terrifying in this movie.
Yeah.
Like the design of the Godzilla miniature, I assume it's a miniature.
I think for this one it's CG, but they used a guy motion capture, so it still walks around like a dude in a suit, but it is CG.
I think, well, because there's definitely, like, most of the destruction scenes are all done with miniatures and shit. I know that much. Because Shinji Higuchi, the co-director of this movie, he's actually one of the co-founders of Gainax. But what he did in the 90s, he broke away from Gainax and made the Gamera trilogy, the Resurgence of Gamera in the 90s. And then,
Dope.
and then he also, him and Anno teamed up, like, in 2010 or so, like, and they made this movie for the Ghibli Museum called A God Warrior Descends on Tokyo, and it's where one of the God Warriors from Nazca just destroys Tokyo for about 7 minutes, and they made it entirely with miniatures. The tone and look of it is exactly the same as this movie.
Yeah,
like,
I remember, I think you linked that to me.
Yeah.
When we were talking about when this is coming out. I was like, you just need to watch this. This is exactly what it's going to be.
yeah, because I was just trying to get you hyped for it, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was, and the reason they made that was just because they thought of miniatures as like a dying art form that they wanted to help preserve. So they made this little short film to like show off what it could do. And I guess the Godzilla people were probably like, hey, do that for Godzilla, because that
Right.
looks pretty fucking sick.
It's
you
been
know?
like how fucking long since we've made a film.
What makes this movie like? In many ways, I think you saw this as a response to the 2014 American movie, because you and your dad did a podcast on that movie.
Yeah.
Where you were trashing it.
We weren't huge fans.
What was the problem with it?
I mean, well, okay. I mean, I'm like...
I know what my problems are, but you know.
I'm like a Godzilla purist, because I've grown up with Godzilla since I was 5. And, like, I really enjoy all the different kinds of movies for their own reasons. Like, I'm not, like, super big into, like, Godzilla has to be this.
Yeah.
You know, because, like, all the movies are different.
They've all been totally, yeah. I mean, unless you were born, like, unless you were watching them in the 70s or something and you had some era you could, like, latch onto.
Yeah.
If you came into Godzilla in the 90s, it was already an extremely multifaceted franchise. Because the ones I grew up on, I also caught onto it when I was 5, but it was just, like, a friend of mine had a whole bunch of them on VHS, and it was, like, mostly the corny 70s, like, Godzilla versus movies. So, like, that's the main ones I grew up on. And
They're still great.
Yeah, and
those.
well, because I just liked it for the real goofy tokusatsu fight scene kind of shit. You know,
like-
I would fast forward over the
fucking
first 30 minutes of most of them. You
Terror
know?
of Mechagodzilla, when Godzilla literally, like, starts boxing with Mechagodzilla is fucking
Oh my god.
I think my favorite had always been like Megalon and Gigon, were like, because they're the most just like fun for kids action movies. You know,
They're very silly.
And the one with the fucking Gadzuki.
Minya,
Yeah.
son of Godzilla. Godzilla's Revenge.
It was Godzilla's
is-
Revenge. That's the one. The one with the kid, right? Who's like
Yeah.
dreaming the whole fucking Godzilla
That's
story.
incredibly hard to watch now.
Dude, it never made any sense. The movie made no fucking sense,
Well,
but it had a lot of monsters in it. And
It's
that was why it
because
was
that
cool.
movie was a clip movie. They took all those monster fights, except for the fight with Minya versus the bully monster, were all just from other movies that they spliced back together.
Well, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah,
boy.
that was a cash-in film.
That
my
movie is a
friend.
clusterfuck. Even as a kid, I thought that movie was a clusterfuck.
Yeah, it was really weird.
But so in 2014, they made an American Godzilla movie, and there's this weird mindset that Hollywood seems to have of like the way that you revive a franchise is to just make it like more real. Like, oh, we have the technology now to make it real. Godzilla's gonna feel like it's gonna be, you know, dark and spooky, and he's gonna be really intense, and like the sound's it's gonna be loud and big and look good. And like, yeah, it did look good, and that was it. That's the only thing
Right.
memorable about that movie, is that Godzilla
I'll
himself looked good.
I'll be honest, I like the Godzilla 2014 design more than Shin Godzilla.
Yeah?
I mean, I appreciate like the design of Shin Godzilla, but like just as someone who like I have this caricature idea of what Godzilla is supposed to be, 2014 hits it much closer.
I mean, 2014 was Swolezilla.
yeah, he's pretty jacked.
And I mean, like, I'll give 2014 that there is, everyone loves the badass scene where he, like, takes one of the monsters and just, like, breathes fire down its fucking throat and kills it. And that's,
Holy
like,
shit.
it's classic Godzilla, but it is literally the only thing anyone remembers from the movie.
Yeah,
like, it is because it's just, all it was is an attempt to make a, like, photorealistic Godzilla movie,
Well, it's because it's just another... It was Cloverfield 2, essentially, is what it was. Because the whole time they're just, like, they keep cutting away from Godzilla, because it's just, like, the monster is, like, mysterious. I'm like, the monster's, like, the size of 3 skyscrapers.
Right.
Why are you hiding this
and
from
it's
me?
like...
It's like, we know what Godzilla looks like.
We've
this isn't the Cloverfield monster.
There's 40 Godzilla movies. There's no mystery. We know what he does. He shows up and he blows everything up.
Yeah.
That's his mission.
What he came to see.
There's just, I mean, the plot in Godzilla movies is never that great. Like the good thing is, like, 1954 and Shin Godzilla have good plots.
Yeah.
Because they're about the story and, like, what the message they're trying to convey.
But it's not hard to make a good stupid Godzilla movie.
No, it's
because
not.
we just want to watch a big lizard beat up a big weird monster and, like, destroy all of Tokyo in the process.
Because, like, they spend all this time in 2014 building up Bryan Cranston's character and giving him motivation of wanting to track down Godzilla. Then they kill him so we can follow Kick-Ass around for the rest of the movie that I don't care about because, like, I need to find my wife. I'm like, just like every other bland, stereotypical Western action character for the last, like, 40 years. So that's not interesting. And then they keep cutting away from, like, the monster fight, which is the reason you're there. Like, the Honolulu thing.
Right.
Like, they do that panning up reveal shot, and Godzilla roars, and you're like, all right, we're going to have a throwdown. And then they cut away from the fight and show you the aftermath on a tiny little TV as it pans so we can have a conversation with this guy's wife. Gay. And, like, that was the moment the movie died.
It's like a misconception about, like... If you're gonna do a monster movie, it has to be one extreme or the other. Either you have to be like, okay, well, watching a monster fight is not inherently interesting narratively, so we're gonna show as little of it as possible, but that means the narrative has to justify that. And in that movie, it doesn't. It's like, in those old Godzilla movies, like, the final battle was usually long as shit. It was like Godzilla fighting a monster for, like, half the fucking movie. That's what you came to see,
it's like solid, like, last 20 to 30 minutes of the movie is just, like, the slugfest.
And they would find inventive... Like him breathing fire down the neck, cool. That's one moment. Like, I've seen movies where Godzilla... One of the most memorable fights for me is when Godzilla and the crab monster are, like, throwing a rock back and forth. Mm-hmm. Like, they're really, like, he throws a rock at it and it deflects it, and then he just keeps trying because he's stupid and he's a fucking lizard, and it just keeps throwing him back. And he's like, what if I use 2 rocks? And it's just, that's the shit I remember from a Godzilla fight scene,
Yeah.
In this movie, they keep Godzilla to a minimum, but he had, like, every moment you see Godzilla is, like, seared into my mind. Like, when you see the weird armless one at the beginning, and it's just, like, the fucking big googly eyes on it, and it's just like,
what am I looking at?
Yeah, and it's simultaneously hilarious, as it should be, because, again, the first 30 minutes is kind of a comedy. But, and then when he gets scary, the movie gets scary, and when the fucking jaw splits open to use the hyper beam, oh boy! Watching that in theaters, I had every hair on my body was standing up in that scene. Like, that shit is...
I feel like, I mean, this is probably me totally making it up, because this movie was probably in production for years, but I feel like that scene, to me, is a response to the 2014 build-up of his fire, when it's just like, man, this little thing comes out, the monster's like, oh, and he kind of, like, falls back into the building. It's like, oh, no, it tickles, stop. And this one just, like, the entire city gets destroyed
This movie definitely didn't go into production until after the 2014 movie came out. So I do think there's a good chance that they looked at it and said, this is not good. This is not what a Godzilla movie is supposed to be.
It was really just...
And I mean, like, Hideaki Anno is a toku guy. Like, he made tokusatsu before he made anime. He did, have you heard of his college short film where he is Ultraman?
No, but now I need to see.
He made a 30-minute... I don't think there's any subtitles for it. There might be now. There wasn't at the time I made my Anno video years ago. But, well, it was like an Ultraman fan film that's like half an hour long that he made as like a student film. And he himself literally turns giant and just... Like, he doesn't even wear like... Like, he doesn't even wear a mask. It's just him. He just is Ultraman, and he fights a monster. But, like...
I'm about that.
It's pretty classic. It's I know it's on YouTube somewhere, but yeah. So and funnily enough, I read in an interview with him once that he did not like Godzilla growing up. He was all about Ultraman because he liked heroes. He thought Godzilla was scary. And I think it's only because he now is like a grown-ass man who has like concerns about his country
Got a chip on his shoulder now.
that he kind of understands Godzilla. And like, I mean, granted, I think he showed influence from Godzilla even in Eva, because like the scene, this movie has the same scene that's in every Godzilla movie of the entire military force is exhausted trying to destroy it and none of it is effective. It happens every time. Also happens in episode 1 of Eva with the Angel. Like, the whole first episode is just them attacking it, and, you know, they drop the N2 mine and it doesn't work. And, you know, that's when the military kind of has to concede and pass off to the autism squad at Nerve, you know. So the same thing happens here. It's set to the same fucking soundtrack as well. Same composer.
Glorious.
But literally the same music. And I really think that was meant to be a calling card. Like, because this whole movie, what I think this movie does right that the American film did so wrong is that the American film thinks we'll make Godzilla better by making it more real. And that is such a momentary way to look at movies. Because technology is always going to be improving. Like this... let's say in 10 years, movies are full VR experiences. Like, no one will ever return to Godzilla 2014. But people will return to Shin Godzilla because what the movie's about is timeless. Yeah. It's about this idea of evolution and progress and not letting yourself be, you know,
like, with these movies, you have, like, two sides of the scale you can be on. On the one side, you have something like Shin Godzilla or 1954, where... you know, the monster is like this force of nature and you're trying to comment about the human condition. Yeah. And the monster's basically just a metaphor, but it looks really cool. On the other side of the spectrum, you have Pacific Rim, where it's just like, punching is fucking sick.
And Pacific Rim is great for being that kind of movie. Like, it is, like, the punching is good. There's a lot of it.
That's,
you know?
That's
like,
what you're there for.
You show up to 2014 and it's like 15 minutes of Godzilla. You watch Pacific Rim and it's like half the movie is like giant robots fighting giant monsters, you know?
It makes no bones about it. You know, they take a giant fucking...
and it still manages to have messages about
I mean, you can't...
globalism and shit.
Your story can still be potent, even if it's not, like, the central focus of the movie.
And so I think with this movie, like, there was no concern at all about, like, realism. It was about, can you take it seriously? Like, regardless of... because for me, the idea of immersion, I can't stand that whole idea, because immersion doesn't happen from something like... from tone. I don't get immersed because a movie has a thick tone. I get immersed because I'm interested, you know? And so, like, when I have to just sit... when I feel like I don't get the point of a movie is when I'm not interested, you know? And so, like...
I mean, I'm not too worried about the plausibility of shit as long as the movie can, like, justify itself in some manner that
it's a fucking movie about a big lizard coming out of the ocean to fuck up the country.
Like, feeds on nuclear power.
Who cares if it looks real? Who cares if it sounds real? So they use, like, all the classic sound effects. Like, Godzilla's got the same voice he's had since the 50s. The missile sound effects are, like, old school.
They actually open the movie with the exact same title card and shot of the original 1954 movie.
Oh, that's fucking great. I still haven't seen the original, by the way, and I know my cred is out the window for that.
You've made a mistake!
I just didn't have it as a kid. All I had was the fucking 70s movies.
It's really good.
But,
the dub is totally different, though.
Yeah, I've heard as much. I mean, I wouldn't watch it dubbed, you know. Why go for that version? So the sound effects are all old school. We got the classic music. We got, just, you know, using miniatures, using stuff that is cheesy, but, like, makes sense. The fucking using train bombs, like,
that was great.
I love it because it's like, it looks... I feel like they, with that ending scene, they went out of their way to make it look like deliberately goofy. They were just like, look, this is how you do a final, like, this is how this movie is supposed to end. It doesn't matter that it looks stupid or that it's corny. Like, it's quintessentially Japanese.
They were even wearing the biohazard suits.
Yeah, they got they got biohazard suits on. There's the trains, like, is like, what could be more Japanese than a bunch of fucking bullet trains,
right?
You know, and like fire rescue gear. Like, it's just like, here, if we're gonna defeat Godzilla and make it a movie about Japan, then it shouldn't be about making the final scene badass. It's about making it Japanese, you know, and that's why I really love the way they defeat him. What else is there to say about this movie?
One Well, I guess I can talk about this since you haven't seen the fucking movie, but like it's interesting how, despite the fact that like this movie and 1954 are probably the most like similar in terms of like execution and like what they're how they're like telling their story, I feel like the themes of both films are very different. Because like the whole thing in 1954 is that Godzilla shows up, everybody flips shit and is like, we gotta kill him, and they can't do it.
Yeah.
Like Godzilla dies at the end of the movie, and the only way they can do that is with a fake technology. There's a scientist who develops something he's been working on throughout the whole movie called the Oxygen Destroyer. And so they basically steal the Oxygen Destroyer from him, and they use that to kill Godzilla. And like the whole point is that he wanted to keep this away from like humanity because like it was a devastating weapon. It destroys oxygen in matter around it. So like it just
basically
sucks the
like a
oxygen
nuclear bomb times 2.
It's pretty bad. So like it just turns you into a skeleton basically is what happens in the movie. It's pretty gnarly. So he's like, I don't want anyone to know how this technology works. So he burns all of his notes. He goes underwater where Godzilla is with the Oxygen Destroyer and like cuts the line so he can't get back up and kills himself and Godzilla so no one can ever use the weapon.
So the professor in Shin Godzilla is probably a reference to that guy. The one who like left behind his notes.
It's very possible.
Because
like,
they say there's like a whole scene of them saying like he really hated like nuclear testing, like what the government had done, and he hated Japan because his wife had died from this nuclear radiation. So like this is why he just kind of absconded and like didn't talk to anybody, you know?
Yeah.
And then he says at the end, do what you want, just as I did. So, yeah, I feel like they're trying to imply that this is probably the same dude. I mean, this is me going on not even having seen the original. But...
I mean, possibly. I don't know. Like, the theme of the original 1954 movie, though, because it's, like, it's very, like, fearful. Because it's just, like, this is some shit that we just literally started fucking with, and we don't know what it's going to do. Like, nothing... Like, because Godzilla's the metaphor for nuclear power, and it's like, nothing we have can control this. The only way the movie can end on a good note is if we literally make shit up to beat it, and that's the theme of the movie. But I feel like the theme or like the message of this movie is that like because like they're hammering home the whole time that Godzilla is like the ultimate life form, you know, like fucking straight out of Sonic Adventure 2, like the ultimate life form.
Oh my god, he is. That's why Sonic Adventure 2 is such an autism trap. Oh Jesus.
So no. And it's like it can evolve, and like they say multiple times, like it's a more advanced life form than mankind. Right. And so like, but at the end of the movie, the whole theme is that like these like quote unquote lesser beings collaborated and were able to come together and overcome something that was bigger than themselves. Because
Godzilla is just one, and like that's kind of why the implied terror at the very end is that he's gonna multiply. That like the tail might be turning into a because we see this scene of just like a little piece breaking off of the tail, or like it's shifting downward, and then in the final battle the tail is also able to use the beam, and there's someone's like, how can he do that, because he wasn't able to do it before, but like, and then at the very end we see the tail with all these like small creatures coming off of it, and it kind of looks more like a second head. So it's sort of implied that what he's learning from humanity, from our effort, is, oh, I need to be multiple so that I can evolve faster.
Like, the point is that, like, you know, the next stage in that evolution would be to be a collective of people. And, like, it's positive in that, like, it's saying something good about humanity.
Yeah, well...
Alright, this camera's not gonna work for it.
Yeah, because mine cuts every 30 minutes. At least yours doesn't seem to do that.
Most of them do that because of, European tax laws.
What?
You pay extra for like importing if it's technically a camcorder, so if they cut off at a certain time, they're not technically a camcorder.
That is exactly the kind of bureaucracy that I'm talking about. That is that I'm just gonna leave this audio clip in, by the way. Like, our camera keeps cutting out in the middle of this, and I just want you all to hear this is exactly what this movie's about.
Yeah. So Hideaki Anno is like the most anti-weird utilitarian. I don't fucking care.
I mean, I think he is utilitarian. Just like he just understands that bureaucracy inhibits utilitarianism. You know, like what is utilitarian about telling people about that legal denomination? You know,
I'm just taking a shot at Nate because he's all about bureaucracy.
Well, I think Nate's mentality is the same as the characters in this movie. Of like, I'm bureaucratic because I'm looking for the answer, but as soon as he gets an answer, he'll, you know, consider it.
I love you, Nate, but you're silly sometimes. But yeah, no, the multiplication thing is like a good thing. It's like it's saying something positive about humanity. Is that like we can be greater than ourselves, you know?
Right.
And like because Godzilla is trying to become us, because like the skeletons are kind of humanoid. They're not like just little Godzillas. They have like humanoid kind of skulls and like rib cages and things like that. So it's like trying to become closer to what we are, because like it's working. So it's more of a positive end than the 1954, where it's like we're fucked.
The shot that like really resonated with me in the ending is when it cuts to Yaguchi like standing against the rail and Godzilla in the background, like framing him as bigger than Godzilla.
Yeah.
Like this guy's leadership skill was able to conquer this beast, and there it is, just frozen piece of shit in the background, unable to do anything. And yeah, I also love the way that once they find out that Godzilla is doing nuclear fission, like, even though everyone's, like, afraid of it and they still think they have to destroy it, everyone's kind of excited about, like, the potential, They're like, and they end up convincing France to have the UN push back the bombing for a while, just because they knew France would be interested in, like, progressing the nuclear technology, and, like, if there was a chance of them being able to preserve the monster, they'd rather do that, and now they get the chance to. So if they made a sequel to this movie, it would have to be, like, total sci-fi, like, nonsense, and it would be awesome, because I would love for there to be a movie where, like, Godzilla, because they even give, like, a time limit of how long he can stay frozen for, I think.
Yeah.
So, like,
they're just like, yeah, it's gonna fucking...
So if we assume that, like, the stable of autists were to study Godzilla, figure out how the evolution works, and figure out, which they did through the origami thing, which, by the way, I love that, because recently I had a bit of a manic episode in which I thought I decoded all of the universe, and
if only we could be so lucky.
Well, basically I thought that the key to the future is coding, because we have to learn coding so that we can express more complicated ideas than what we can through language. And when we code, if we have 3-dimensional space, we can do, we just have, like, a bigger possibility space. And this is why there's so much potential in, like, VR and, like, coding in the 3rd dimension. Like, we can imagine a space in technology where we could experiment with, like, stuff like, hey, if I touch the air, it will make a thing happen, and, like, that is potentially possible in real life. Like, everything in the universe is just vibrations, so if we knew the code to manipulate vibrations in reality, we could theoretically make anything happen. Like, we could make matter transform.
We just have to hack life.
Exactly. I mean, that's what they do in Star Trek. Like, that's how they solved the energy crisis. That's why they have, like, the food machines where it literally just, like, changes the molecules in the air to make a food, and so you can have infinite food. And so I figure the only way we're going to learn how to code that is 3-dimensionally. And so in this movie, like, they're looking at this 2D code map, and then they realize that they have to fold
it. It's like Godzilla's genome or something. This mysterious scientist who killed himself, turned into Godzilla, something. There's a huge theory. People are like, yeah, the scientist is Godzilla.
I thought wasn't it his boat at the start of the movie?
Right.
Because they show the paper crane on
the
boat.
Boat's there, and then, like, Godzilla's there. He's like, he turned into Godzilla. That's the point. I'm like, I don't know.
No, I think he got killed by Godzilla at the start. Is what I think happened.
Or something. I don't really.
If Godzilla eats him, doesn't he then become part of Godzilla?
Maybe that's him breaking out of the tail.
Even though I've never watched the original Godzilla movie, I have read the first Godzilla book. I don't know if it predates the movie. I don't know if the movie is based on the book. Yeah.
I have no idea it was based on a book.
I think it was. Well, there's a shitload of Godzilla books, but I've
read some Godzilla books. But
I read the first one, and the original Godzilla book opens with, like, a Japanese ship. Like, the captain's talking about how his son is about to be born on January 1st. Oh, it's such a good luck birthday. And then, of course, Godzilla shows up, and, like, there's this... it really resonated with me because there's, like, an in-depth description of, like, his flesh all melting off as the fucking energy beam, like, tears through the ship. It's pretty awesome. But,
not for him.
Yeah, no. But, like, so it's kind of tradition for Godzilla's movies to, like, open on a guy on a boat. Even the American ones copied this element, at least, to have a guy dying on a boat at the start. So, and usually whoever is on that boat is usually who named Godzilla, or Gojira, as it were. This movie kind of parodies the Because in the American movies, there's always the scene where they hear the Japanese name Gojira and then they name it Godzilla, like they translate it that way. And in this movie, the opposite happens. The Americans actually name it first, and then the Japanese decide to call it Gojira, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
But and not the first time Godzilla's made reference to the American films, because in Final Wars, the 97 Godzilla gets like stomped to bits in Sydney in like 2 seconds, and it's fucking hilarious.
There's actually there was a movie, one of my favorite Godzilla movies came out, I think it was like 2004. It was Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah. Giant all-out monsters attack.
I've heard of that one. I heard that was a good one.
And there's a quick little reference to the beginning, because the plot of the movie is that there's Godzilla is like this evil creature force of nature, and then there's like 3 guardian monsters that are going to protect humanity or whatever. And they're talking like in the beginning about how Godzilla is coming back, and they're like, wasn't Godzilla in New York a couple years ago? I was like, no, that wasn't Godzilla, some other fucking piece of shit. The Americans are retarded.
That's fucking
and it's just like this quick little jab, and I'm like,
it's obvious that they're quite ashamed of Toho's ashamed of letting.
I'm ashamed of being
that.
American for that.
Yeah.
Like there's like things I'm ashamed of being American. Like Donald Trump's in like the top 10, but number 1 is 98, dude. That was fucking abominable.
So what the fuck was I talking about? Oh, the genome. Yeah, so when they solve it by making the paper crane, then they then present the code, and they had to like structure it 3-dimensionally for it to be understandable. And so I think that's I think Anno is kind of onto the same shit I'm onto with that. Like, you know, his theory that like, oh, we'll be able to fucking speed up evolution if we can code 3-dimensionally or something. But
it's a bit of a stretch, but I'll accept it.
I just think it's just that like all technological progress is made by learning codes. You know, like we just learn the codes to do something with technology. And so if we have the 3-dimensional space, it just, you know, I mean, computers used to be punch cards. Like it literally was a 2-dimensional plane that you were feeding 1s and 0 information through. But like as we've made those smaller and smaller, you know, we can do more. But like if we could just imagine if you could. Anyway, you get what I'm trying to say. Point being that what I want from the sequel of this movie is that since they've cracked Godzilla's genome, that means we can use his technology. So the next movie needs to be a battle of like humans versus Godzilla, like the Godzilla army just constantly evolving and one-upping each other until it's like Gurren Lagann, like where they just keep growing, like every episode it's like, no, now they're the size of the moon. Oh, now they're the size of the galaxy. And like
they got to make a new version of Mechagodzilla, but this time it's biotechnology.
And it wouldn't even be weird for Godzilla to go there, because like Space Godzilla took place like, you know, had them fucking flying around the universe and shit. So it's not like Godzilla can't go way the fuck out there. And that's where I want it to go. I want there to be a sequel where it's just like total abandon of like any reality or sense of logic. Because it's like, hey, we've got... I mean, in the movie, they say they have the tech. They understand how Godzilla works now.
That's kind of what the animated film on Netflix is doing right now.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, like because
is that a sequel or
no? That's like a separate thing. But that movie takes place like thousands of years in the future, where Godzilla and all the monsters overran Earth, and we had to abandon Earth. So everybody leaves, and then like a couple thousand years later, we come back because like we can't find another habitable planet. There's like one ship left, like the last bastion of humanity, and there's Space Eren Yeager because he's really mad because Godzilla killed his mom, and he's gonna kill Godzilla. So they go back, and like the entire planet is like thousands of years later now. It's just overrun by monsters, and so they just have like all this advanced technology.
Is it any good?
I thought it was pretty good
because I had heard it sucked, so I didn't watch it. But
I liked it a lot.
I'll check it out. It's written by Butch
my
Gann.
tolerance for Godzilla is very high, so take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean...
well, it's, you know, it's one of my favorite writers.
But the second one, they're having Mechagodzilla, so he's going to have a big, giant fucking... Because, like, the end of the... I don't want to spoil the end of the movie, but the end of the movie is fucking sick.
Alright, I'll check it out. What's it called again?
Godzilla Monster Planet.
Monster Planet.
Yeah. Monster Planet.
That is the one that is the one that was written by Urobuchi Gen, right? Okay. Well, that's all I have to say about Shin Godzilla. You want to throw anything in?
Yeah, what were your favorite characters?
Ooh. I think I mean, I love obviously Yaguchi is great. He's just the guy who does the right things.
He wears the pants.
The dude who's one above him, I really like a lot because he constantly brings him back. I meant to mention this. Thank you for reminding me that one of my favorite lines in the movie is after the first 30 minutes where it goes from just being like straight comedic to gradually a little bit more frustrating and depressing. There's a moment where Yaguchi's like, you know, we had 2 whole hours that we could have done something and we didn't do anything. And the other guy says like, look, everyone did the best they could. Don't get full of yourself, you know? Like, it constantly reminding him like, hey, look, I know that you could, like, you had all the ideas and you knew all the answers, but guess what? You weren't in a position to do anything, were you? Like, you were no better than anyone else here, so, like, you need to figure out what you can do. You know, like, you need to figure out what is the way to go forward. And, like, having that guy as the sort of, like, shadow leader of everything. Like, you know, at the end when he says, this was all according to your scheme, and he's like, no, it was the prime minister's scheme. Like, because we all understand, like, even the old dudes understand that they are not doing, like, they don't understand how to make the right decision. You know, like, we're in this bureaucratic system, we're trapped within it because that's how our country functions, and we can't get rid of that. But, like, you know, no one at any stage is like, oh, we have to preserve the system as it is. You know, like, they understood that this younger generation has to take over.
It's like
one
a
day.
golden mean sort of thing, because, like, the whole point of, like, bureaucracy when it's working is that you take all these small, weak people and you build something bigger.
Right.
But if it gets, like, you know, held down by its own weight, that's when bad things happen.
Yeah, and I mean, in Japan there is the concept of mono no aware, the death of things, that, like, there's a greater understanding that, like, everything will die, things will pass, and, like, the new generation will take over. So there's less of this, like, pearl clutching from the older generation that I feel like America has, where they're you know, oh, them damn millennials, we can't let them take over the country because they're gonna make everybody gay. And in Japan, it's much more of a like, well, we understand that this younger generation gets this technology that we don't get, and we need them, you know. And, like, there's more of a push to try to mobilize the young people who are all fucking neats and, you know, trapped trapped for the same reasons we are in a job market that won't let them in, but less because the higher-ups are preventing it and more just because there's too many fucking old people on Earth in general, you know? We just gotta wait for a lot of old people to die out, and then the new type takeover will begin.
Yeah, but at that point, we'll be the old people.
Good.
Indeed.
I'm okay with that. I want the kids who are coming up now who know more than me. I'm just gonna relinquish all the power to them, you know? Like, once our generation's in control, we'll just be like, oh, well, we don't know shit. Let's let our little brothers who are always one-upping us by
They'll defer to their children.
Yeah.
And the cycle continues.
And then we're ruled by babies, because we just keep going down the chain.
Yes.
The population will continue
Let the babies
to decline
take over.
as we mutilate our genitals.
Yes.
Consciously.
That's a whole other fucking topic for this. Anyway, so yeah, I really like Glasses Guy, and then I also like the fat Glasses Guy. That guy was one of the more relatable characters for me because he's somebody who he's almost comes off at first as like flippant, like he almost comes off like he doesn't care because he's so like he's like cheery and sunny, and he just comes in like, hey Yaguchi, what's going on? And he's like, you know, talking about the press and everything, like getting things under control. But then when Yaguchi like screams and he's like, hey man, you need to fucking chill out, like. And then that's when you realize it's like, okay, yeah, this guy is not like that because he doesn't care. He's like that because he's just really fucking mental. He's like, his mind's like a steel trap, you know? Yeah. The man is just not shaken because he understands that there's no help in being shaken. It's not helpful to anybody to be yelling and to be scared. It's just like, let's keep up that same can-do attitude. People die all the time. It's no different now, you know?
Get that shit done.
So, yeah, I like that guy a lot too. Who's your favorite?
I liked President Not guy from America who's just talking in English for no apparent reason. And then, like, his, like, liaison, who's an Asian lady, who just, like, every 3 sentences, like, I gotta throw some English in here just to remind everybody that I'm from America.
Well, because I think she's supposed to be half American. Like,
yeah.
They didn't really choose an actress who looks half American, but, like, yeah.
She's still hot.
They definitely picked her, like... The funny thing about that actress is that, like, her performance is super over the top and goofy, but, like, I think they just told her, like, you need to come off American, you know, like, so she just was, like, as boisterous as possible.
Stereotypical, like, this is what America's like, right?
Who's your favorite character?
I really loved all the side characters that were, like, I liked the Korean guy with the sweater. It's like, origami!
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was really cool, and I loved the Spurg with the glasses who, as soon as he went on social media, he saw his computer, freaked out, and ran around the room.
Oh yeah, that guy's great.
He was so fun.
Oh!
There was a great cast in this movie.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Everyone feels very real. Every character, for as little screen time as they might have gotten, they all feel like totally realized people, like someone you would expect to find in that situation.
Much like
great
the
casting
movie itself, all those small roles added up to a bigger collective whole.
Exactly.
Indeed.
All right, well, that's our podcast on Shin Godzilla. By the way, so Tom is currently staying here for the foreseeable future, I guess.
I don't know. We haven't really figured that out yet.
So, Tom's a big tokusatsu guy. I am a tokusatsu noob. I've grown up with Power Rangers, Godzilla, Beetleborgs, but I as an adult, all I've really watched is half of Shin Gojira and an episode of Decade and some other shit.
Shin Gojira's pretty good though.
Yeah, I love Shin Gojira, but so we want to make some tokusatsu podcasts, but I don't just want to. First of all, nothing current, because fuck that.
Yeah.
There's no reason to talk weekly about shows that are the exact same every fucking week.
So they did the henshin, and they beat up the rubber guy, and there was some laughs.
And
See you next week.
I'd rather not focus too much on Super Sentai or Kamen Rider because every fucking toku blog in the world covers those. If you're someone who doesn't know anything about tokusatsu and someone's ever tried to get you into it, they've probably tried to get you in through those two series, and if that didn't work, you're not going to get into toku. And if you did get into it, you already know about Kamen Rider and Super Sentai. There's no reason to re-educate you. So I want us to focus more on either classics or things that are more obscure and interesting and weird. So audience, let us know if you want to hear about toku. What toku do you think we should cover? Recommend us. Movies would be great. We should probably do some Gamera. I don't know anything about Gamera.
Yeah, Gamera's fucking sick. If you haven't seen any of them?
No, I haven't seen any of them.
The Showa movies are hard to get through because they're skewed even younger than the Showa Godzilla series. They're just designed for 5-year-olds. But the new ones from the 90s were fucking dope, especially the first one. It was
so yeah, I mean, maybe we'll do some of that. Maybe we'll do some other shit. I guess we probably shouldn't do another giant monster one right after this one. But
probably not.
Just let us know what toku you'd be most interested in hearing. A guy who, well, you're big. I wouldn't say you're deep lore toku guy.
I'm not a super fan, but I had a really big phase going on in 2007, when I graduated high school, because there was a great site called Stage 6 that had all the shit on there. And you could just easily watch it, and then there was a one-button download. You just download things.
Oh boy!
It's by Divx. It was a great site, and it was killed because, of course, it was. It was too good for this world. But I just watched all of Shin Gojira and Kabuto as they were coming out and stuff. So it was on my shit for a while. But
yeah. So you know enough that if we started watching old shit, I mean, we can obviously do research. We are learned men.
Yeah.
So if you want to see a couple of guys talk about some toku shit, recommend us some stuff you want us to talk about, and maybe we'll cover it. There'll be no regularity to this, no rules. No. Keeping it breezy, keeping it light. And May will be on if she feels like it.
If it's good enough, I will be on.
You were just excited to watch Shin Godzilla.
Oh yeah, I was hyped.
Because you saw Ava for the first time recently. Oh, I need to point that out before we leave, just that this is the Jet Alone episode of Ava made into a movie, including the music. just gotta clarify, if you didn't figure that out watching it, it's the same fucking thing. Anyway, peace out.